This is Pastor Matt, and we're so excited that you're joining us to talk about how God is good. Today, we're going to be hearing the story of Elijah, the widow, and the endless oil.
I can't wait to share the story with you. But if you didn't hear our last video about how God is great in the ways in which he provided food for the Israelites, stop now and watch the last video.
Today, our story comes from the Bible in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 17, verses 8 to 16. And it takes place in Zarephath. Now, Zarephath was a big city and it was full of people who were not Israelites. This means that the people didn't know who God was and they didn't worship him.
At the time of the events recorded in 1 Kings, Zarephath, as well as most of the surrounding area, was experiencing a devastating drought. That means that there was no rain. Crops could not grow and bodies of water dried up. There wasn't even enough water to drink.
That sounds really hard. I hate being thirsty.
It was really difficult. And that brings us to a woman in Zarephath, a mother whose husband had died. She was the matriarch of her family and was trying to provide for herself and her son. But both of them were close to death. One day, she was out gathering sticks to prepare what little food she had left when she met a man named Elijah.
Oh, Elijah! I remember him. He was a prophet of God. A prophet means that God gave him a special message to share with other people. God told Elijah that just as he had provided food and water for the Israelites in the desert, that was last week's story, God promised to provide food and water for Elijah during the drought. God is great! That's what we talked about last time, when God provided manna to rain down for the Israelites to eat.
God always keeps his promises. Now eventually Elijah's water source dried up, so God sent him to Zarephath to meet the widow there. When Elijah asked the widow for some water, she went and brought some back to him. But when he asked her for some bread, she told him, "I don't have any food. Only a handful of flour in a jar and a bit of oil in a bottle. Look at me. I'm collecting 2 sticks so that I can make some food for myself and my son. We'll eat the last of the food and then die."
It was really nice of her to share her water with Elijah. I mean, it sounds like it was really hard. They were probably all really hungry and really thirsty and probably really sad.
Yeah, they were. Next, Elijah told the woman to make a little loaf of bread for him. Then something for herself and her son. And then he told her that until the drought was over, God would not let her jar of flour or her bottle of oil decrease. God would continue to provide so that she and her son could live. The widow trusted God and fed Elijah, and neither the jar of flour nor the bottle of oil decreased during the drought. They never ran out of it.
That's incredible! Wow. I wonder what it takes to make bread.
Well, that's what we're going to do today. Pause the experiment on the supply list and get a grown-up to help you. Today's experiment is more advanced and will require us to use a stove. You don't have to follow along, and you can keep watching to see how we make bread like the woman would have. Pause the video now.
Press pause and collect the following ingredients listed above to complete the experiment. Get your grown-up and come on back. Press play to follow along. You can also just press play now to watch us make bread like the widow in our story. All right, now it's time to cook like the widow would have. When people make the bread that we eat today, like in sandwiches or you buy at the store, it takes a lot of ingredients like yeast, baking powder, salt, particular types of flour. It can get really intense. Now, it's possible that the widow in the story had all these fancy ingredients, but maybe not. Now, what do you think bread with only flour and oil and a little bit of salt would taste like?
I don't think it would be too tasty, but let's find out.
All right. First, we're going to get a bowl and measure out our flour into it. We just have regular all-purpose flour here, and we're going to need 1 cup of it. Can you hold this? I'll pour our flour in. All right, 1 cup of flour.
Careful, the flour can get everywhere.
All right. We're measuring out 1 cup. And into our bowl it goes.
All right. And drop.
All right. 1 cup of flour is in. And the next thing we need to do is add 1 teaspoon of baking powder.
Aha.
I'll give this to you to measure out.
Okay, there's 1.
Yep, 1 is all it needs. 1 teaspoon. The next ingredient is a half teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit in. Tell me when you think that's good. It's about a half.
Looks good.
All right, and then the next thing we're gonna add is a teaspoon of rosemary. Ooh. We're using this because it's a pretty popular seasoning that they may have had, but you can add any flavor or seasoning you want. So, 1 teaspoon
of rosemary. Ooh, look at that. Smells delicious.
All right, 1 teaspoon of rosemary is in, and we're gonna mix all of our dry ingredients together.
Okay, I'm mixing. It helps to use a spoon for this part. All right.
All mixed up?
I think so. Now what?
All right, the next we have is oil, like the widow in the story used. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of oil. A tablespoon is a little bit bigger than that teaspoon we had.
1, 2.
All right.
How do I mix that on up? Just like the widow?
Well, we need 1 more ingredient, and that's going to be a third of a cup.
Oh.
Wrong cup.
Wrong cup.
A third of a cup of warm water.
Oh, but our third of a cup's in here.
Yep.
Here we go. Whoop.
All right, now we're gonna mix it all up really good.
All right, it's turning into something.
Starting to look like dough.
Yes, it is.
You're gonna wanna mix it up till it looks like what you would make cookie doughs with, or a thicker dough that you could shape. So not too runny.
That's getting really thick.
Not too powdery. So while Pastor Matt mixes that, I'm gonna bring our griddle over. We have a hot surface called a griddle that we're going to cook our bread on, but you could also use a pan on your stove at home. So I'm gonna get our griddle.
Here we go, mixing away. Look at this, it almost looks like dough. I think we're doing something right.
All right, I have
Sweet.
Our hot surface here is a griddle.
Okay.
We're gonna be really careful around it.
All right. Does that look about right?
It looks like dough.
Yeah.
All right, our ingredients are enough to make us 4 pieces of bread, like in the story. So what we're gonna do is make sure we have clean, washed hands, and we are going to take our dough and separate it into 4 parts. And you can use your hands for that if you'd like. This is where it gets a little fun.
All right, here we go.
Do you want to give me about a half?
Whoa. Whoa.
All right. And then
my.
we're going to take the halves again,
Uh-huh.
so that you've got a fourth of it. And we're going to use our hands. It might get a little messy, and we're going to shape them into thin circles that look like little pieces of bread.
Okay, looks like using your fingers to kind of spread it out is a good trick.
Yep. So our surface is oiled, meaning that it won't stick to it. And we're gonna just put our little circles of bread down. We're gonna put all 4 down, and then we're gonna let them cook for about 5 minutes.
Okay.
We're gonna flip it so it cooks on both sides and get it all cooked up.
And your hands might get a little messy.
We're gonna watch our dough cook, flipping it halfway through for 5 minutes, and then we're gonna join you again so we can do a little bit of a taste test, and we can try what the bread was like that Elijah, the widow, and her son ate. All right, friends, we're back. Here is our bread. These little crispy circles, they kind of look like cookies to me. Let's give them a taste.
It tastes pretty good.
It
Not
does.
bad. Yeah.
Now, it might not be as tasty as the bread we buy in the store, but it is pretty good, and it's just like the bread in the story. Now, the widow in the story used just what simple ingredients she had to make bread, and it turned out good like ours. She did this by faith because she trusted what God said through Elijah that her ingredients would not run out.
Having faith in God's goodness means sharing what we have with one another, knowing that through our sharing, God makes sure there is enough for all. Elijah shared his promise with the widow so that she and her family could eat. She trusted Elijah and shared what little she had with him. Elijah and the widow, like Elijah and the widow, we can share what we have already been given with the people who may need it.
We hope you can think about ways that you can help others or spread kindness around. Lots of people may need it as you go about your day. You can enjoy your bread and, hey, maybe share it with a friend.
Join us next time as we hear the story of Daniel and his friends eating the good stuff. See you next time.